In 1905, Henry Heinz's company is the largest food manufacturer in the nation. Overcoming economic depression and personal tragedy, he has constructed an empire based on a single principle: food purity. But as ruthless competitors cut dangerous corners, that empire is under constant assault. He is determined to make his standards the law of the land. Henry Heinz is entrusting that fight to his son.
I'm told you're a whiskey man.
Howard Heinz holds more than the future of an American dynasty in his hands.
One is pure, top-shelf bourbon. The other is cut with methanol, the main ingredient in formaldehyde. The question is, can you tell the difference?
He's also fighting for the health and safety of the nation.
That's pure whiskey.
Sure enough to drink it?
In 1870, just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a 23-year-old son of German immigrants is working hard to make his American dream come true. His name is Henry Heinz. As an economic boom sweeps the nation after the Civil War, Pittsburgh is at the center of it all, where business titans like George Westinghouse, Henry Clay Frick, and Andrew Carnegie have been making their names. Now, Henry Heinz is looking to make his, in a business he's been building since he was a boy.
All right, my darling, I have to go.
Gotta get these orders out.
Godspeed.
Beginning at age 8, Heinz sold neighbors the produce from his mother's garden. By 15, he was farming his own 3.5-acre plot, making 3 deliveries a week to local grocers. Now, at 23, he's not only increased his deliveries and his client base, he's producing and selling a product he believes could take his business to the next level: horseradish.
We look at ketchup now as sort of the Heinz product, but that was actually not one of their first successes.
The American diet in the middle of the 19th century was very bland. It needed to be spiced up. Horseradish was the thing to do it. But it was difficult to prepare. It took hours of grating and pickling that most people just didn't have time for. Henry believed that his mother's horseradish was the best around. So if they could bottle that, American women would buy it because it would save them hours of preparation.
Though there are many brands of grated horseradish on the market, Heinz believes his is the best for one simple reason: purity.
Before we had a Food and Drug Administration or any kind of regulatory oversight, you could sell anything in a jar, particularly a dark jar, and say, here, have some horseradish. You could have sawdust. You could even have ground lead in it. And this was not uncommon.
But Henry Heinz refuses to take any dishonest shortcuts. To prove his horseradish is superior, Heinz shows the customer he has nothing to hide, packing it in clear glass bottles.
Heinz's goal was to give consumers a fresh product. So his focus was on this quality, on safety.
Now, clear glass costs more than green glass or brown glass at the time. So it's an investment in allaying a consumer's fears that what they can't see will harm them. And it says, our product is so good, take a look. See for yourself.
To help grow Heinz's business, his family rallies around to pitch in. And there's no one he relies on more than his wife, Sally.
You have to come up for air sometime. Make sure you're eating.
From day one, Sally was by Henry's side. She helped him with whatever needed to be done, and she used some of her own money to get the business going.
Already parents to one-year-old Irene, Henry and Sally hope to expand their family. So Henry works long hours to build the business. And over time, the efforts start to pay off as word spreads about the high quality of his horseradish, soon allowing Heinz to expand into production of other bottled condiments, all with his trademark commitment to quality and purity.
The business was going great. Everybody loved the horseradish sauce, the pickles, the mustard, all the condiments that Heinz was producing.
But Heinz believes that the product he's working on now could be his biggest yet: ketchup.
Ketchup actually goes back to Asia, and ketchup was sort of a term for just soy sauce, really, and a very thin one at that. In Europe in the 1800s, it becomes a thicker thing. It's made from clams, of oysters, and vegetables, and walnuts, so there's all sorts of ketchups.
A carefully seasoned puree of only the finest, freshest tomatoes from his company's farm. Henry believes his tomato ketchup will stand out because of its thickness and its sweetness.
He added brown sugar, which thickened it and sweetened it up, and I think that's the thing that probably made Heinz ketchup become what it was. It was that brown sugar.
It's bright red, and it looked good in a clear glass bottle. It just glowed on the shelves.
Heinz helps spread the word about his new product by giving potential customers a taste.
Henry believed that it was better than anybody else's, so he employed salespeople who would go to grocery stores and offer free samples. When we go to the grocery store today, there are often samples being offered. Henry Heinz invented that.
As Heinz's business continues to grow, so does his family. Already parents to 7-year-old Irene and 5-year-old Clarence, Henry and Sally's son Howard is born in 1878. And in 1882, they are eagerly anticipating the arrival of their 4th child. But their joy at the birth of Robert Heinz in May soon turns to sorrow as he becomes ill and tragically passes away less than 2 weeks after being born. Helping to heal the wounds of the loss is the arrival of Clifford Heinz, just over a year later. And the continuing success of H.J. Heinz and Company. In the ensuing years, Heinz grows his business even more, using America's booming railroads to expand distribution.
The railroad allows Heinz to move those goods reliably, rapidly, and consistently across a country. He can manufacture and send his products to the East Coast in less than a day.
Now almost 40, Heinz is finally achieving the kind of success he has dreamed of. But he continues to work on his ketchup recipe until he believes it is perfect.
Heinz is sort of defining what ketchup is going to become for the future. And he's got a great recipe, it's delicious, it's different than what's become before.
As ketchup sales continue to climb, and with it now selling almost as much as his already popular horseradish and pickles,
Let's go, people.
Henry Heinz is looking for the next opportunity.
Okay, let's keep moving. We gotta get these orders out.
With his products now selling well across the country, in 1886, Heinz seizes an opportunity to expand sales overseas.
Henry Heinz has to be doing the next thing when he's in England on what is supposed to be a holiday and walks into Fortnum and Mason and says, how about some of my pickles? How about some of my relish? This is a man who can't have a holiday without trying to make a market in Britain.
Heinz's impromptu sales pitch lands him an export contract with the legendary London department store. And now, he believes the time is right to take his company's production into the future. His plan? To build a new factory, one that will change the face of American manufacturing.
Most Americans working in the late 19th century were working in extraordinarily difficult conditions. And Pittsburgh was the site of extraordinarily harsh, unjust labor practices. Henry Heinz wanted to create a benevolent and stable form of capitalism.
Having witnessed the bloody riots of Pittsburgh's railroad strikes in 1877, and the growing tension between steelworkers and industrialists like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Frick, Heinz is determined to avoid an adversarial relationship with his workers.
On a trip to Germany, Heinz went to a chocolate factory, and he saw they had health facilities, a gymnasium for their employees, special benefits for the workers, who seemed very happy in a clean, safe environment. Henry took notes. When he came back to Pittsburgh, he said, we're gonna make this a model, a workers' palace.
Beginning in 1888, on a site along the Allegheny River, across from Pittsburgh's bustling downtown, Heinz envisions a modern factory complex unlike anything American manufacturing has ever seen. Powered by electricity.
It's a lot of money to spend on technology that may not even be around in a few years.
We're wiring this factory starting today. This is the future. I need it.
Unwilling to compromise his vision, Heinz moves forward with the project. When completed, there are 17 buildings, powered by electricity, all laid out around an open courtyard. There is grass, trees, and fountains, giving the feeling not of a factory, but of a park.
Back then, there wasn't a Silicon Valley, there weren't venture capitalists. These were giant rolls of the dice. It was make it or break it.
And along with the state-of-the-art facilities, Heinz provides his workers, of whom a majority are women, with a full package of benefits.
Henry cared very deeply about the people who worked for him. He treated his employees wonderfully. He gave people a chance to really feel like they belonged, which engendered such an enormous loyalty in his company.
They had a garden on the roof, free dental care and health care. The women would have freshly laundered uniforms every day and get manicures once a week.
You were offered classes if you were an immigrant, so if you wanted to get your American citizenship, you could take courses at the company.
Heinz's worker-friendly factory stands out in Pittsburgh's unforgiving industrial landscape.
His workers felt like they were part of something. They believed in him.
It was a place where people came and stayed. It's a part of them, and they throw themselves into it. And as they do that, it becomes more part of them.
With a state-of-the-art facility and labor harmony, Heinz sees sales soar. In 1894, total sales are over $1.7 million, the equivalent of $60 million in today's money. But suddenly, none of that matters. As Heinz's beloved wife, Sally, becomes desperately ill.
Sally fell victim to typhoid fever. It was not uncommon in Pittsburgh for people to suffer this malady because of the contaminated water.
The disease shows no mercy. And on November 29th, 1894, Sally Heinz passes away. At what seemed to be the pinnacle of success, Henry Heinz has lost the love of his life. Sally's death casts a pall over the entire Heinz family, as Henry seeks solace in his faith and tries to put the pieces back together.
The shock of Sally's death hit Henry hard. He rolled up his sleeves and rededicated himself to work.
Making matters more difficult is the state of the nation's economy, which is mired in depression. But Henry figures out a way to keep his company in the black.
Henry came up with a line of low-cost foods, especially baked beans that were high in protein but low in cost. He felt it was his duty to help people through the hard times.
Heinz also increases his investment in advertising to ensure consumers are spending what money they do have on Heinz products.
He uses billboards, signs along the railroads. He has newspaper advertisements all over the country. So he's constantly thinking about ways to bring people to Heinz.
In addition to ads, Heinz uses the factory itself to maintain his customers' loyalty and trust.
He opened up his factory in Pittsburgh to anyone that wants to come to visit. You're worried about what's in your pickles? Come see how we make and bottle your pickles. It's extraordinary.
Once the economy has recovered, Heinz doesn't let up, building a monument to the Heinz brand in Atlantic City.
The Heinz Pier is basically a small amusement park that consumers can, without any cost, go in and pay homage to the Heinz company and eat all kinds of samples and experience the history of Heinz.
And at the center of all of Heinz's promotions is the now iconic logo he created in a moment of inspiration.
H.J. Heinz was riding an elevated train in New York City, and he looked out the window and billboards flashed by, and one of them said 21 styles of shoes. And he thought, I wonder how many products I have. And he started writing them down on an envelope. 55, 56, 57, 57. He liked the look of that number. And when he got home, he realized he had a lot more than 57 products already, but he stuck with that number.
The number proves as captivating to the public as it was to Henry Heinz. He puts it on every bottle, every package, every billboard, and even on hillsides along the nation's railroad lines. With his brand firmly established, Heinz spends the ensuing years expanding the company, opening new farms and factories to meet growing demand, while working tirelessly to maintain the high standards of the Heinz name.
Henry Heinz had this extraordinary energy. This is a man who just has to be on the go doing the next thing. He just doesn't stop.
At the turn of the century, Henry Heinz is a certified millionaire. His company that began producing one product now manufactures more than 200, including things like apple butter, celery sauce, tomato chutney, and India relish, and is America's largest producer of pickles, sauerkraut, horseradish, vinegar, and ketchup. But even as he has reached the pinnacle of success, Henry Heinz knows that for the company to continue to grow and thrive, he must prepare for the day when the next generation will take the reins. Heinz's sons, Clarence, Howard, and Clifford, have all grown up working at the company, learning every aspect of the business under the watchful eye of their father.
Henry Heinz was a tough taskmaster. He was demanding. But his children recognized that he loved them. He was a family man.
Though he loves each of his sons, Henry knows that only one of them can be heir apparent. For his oldest son, Clarence, who works in the company's advertising department, it is not to be. For Henry believes he lacks the drive and ambition to take the reins.
You might have expected Clarence to take his father's top spot in the Heinz company, but Clarence was pushed aside.
4 years younger than his brother Clarence, Howard Heinz has a degree in chemistry from Yale and a drive to succeed that rivals his father's.
It is rare you do find the same talent and drive and hunger of the parent in the second generation.
Henry believes Howard is the perfect choice to lead the push for a cause he has built his name on: food purity.
This is in the era of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, which exposed the terrible business practices of meat packers in Chicago, and America was horrified.
Henry Heinz believes once the playing field is level, nothing will be able to threaten his dominance of the market.
Heinz was so good at what he did, he wanted to change the way consumers ate, to change the way they looked at food, and he knew because he was already doing it the right way, this was going to be good for his business.
So in 1906, Henry sends Howard to Washington, D.C. to meet with top Department of Commerce and Department of Agricultural officials on a mission to make H.J. Heinz's food purity standards the law of the land.
Now I'm told you're a whiskey man. Both of these glasses contain whiskey you can find on the shelves of any liquor store. One is pure top-shelf bourbon. The other is cut with methanol, the main ingredient in formaldehyde. The question is, can you tell the difference? Take your time, swirl them around, smell them, do whatever you'd like.
That's pure whiskey.
Sure enough to drink it?
Okay, you've made your point.
The truth is, people are forced to make this decision every day. Only they don't know they're making it.
I'll take it to the president.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks in large part to Howard Heinz's efforts, President Theodore Roosevelt soon signs the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 into law, ultimately paving the way for the creation of the Food and Drug Administration by enacting guidelines that will guarantee the safety of the nation's food supply. Over the next decade, on the strength of the win in Washington, Howard moves to maintain the company's reputation and profitability, using science to help ensure even higher quality products.
Howard's focus was really on continued improvement in the products, continued innovation. He just took it to the next generation.
Howard's leadership on the issue not only gives Henry more confidence in him, but also impresses the government. When the U.S. enters World War I in 1917, Howard is tapped to be the United States Food Administrator of Pennsylvania and is named as a member of the War Industries Board. Then, at the war's conclusion, American Relief Administration head Herbert Hoover selects him to help facilitate the U.S. government's famine relief efforts in Europe.
People were starving all over the world as a result of the First World War, and Howard took on a public role that his father loved.
As Henry takes a step back from running day-to-day operations, laying the groundwork for his eventual retirement, he keeps in regular touch with Howard, proud of the work he is doing, and looking forward to the time when he can officially pass the torch to his son. But then, Heinz's health suddenly takes a turn for the worse.
In 1919, the Heinz Company was the largest food manufacturer in the world. Henry Heinz was riding high, and then he contracted pneumonia.
On May 14, 1919, Henry Heinz passes away at the age of 74. His death is front-page news across the country. But nowhere is the loss felt more profoundly than at the company that bears his name.
The 4,000 workers at the Heinz plant in Pittsburgh felt that they had lost a family member. The plant went into mourning, the city was mourning, and in America, the people realized they had lost someone of importance, someone who had changed their lives in a fundamental way, the way they ate.
To honor their founder, the Pittsburgh employees pool their resources to have a statue of Henry Heinz erected in the rotunda of the main factory building. Howard Heinz assumes the title of President and CEO, determined to honor the foundation his father built while working to move the company into the future.
Howard's focus was really on continued improvement in the products, continued innovation with R&D focus.
Howard brought his chemistry knowledge to bear, and he had a team of chemists looking at seed production and food production to create healthy, nutritious food products.
While Howard's focus on science and technology keeps the company moving forward, profits also get a big boost from the roaring 20s post-war economic boom. But then, in 1929, the stock market crash changes everything, plunging the country into depression as countless companies go bankrupt, while others institute massive layoffs simply to survive. But Howard Heinz, as he gets older, uses that experience to steady the ship. He vows the company will not cut wages or lay off one employee, and shifts focus to better address the nation's needs.
During the Depression, Howard Heinz was very careful about pricing. The company didn't grow a great deal, but he held it together.
After the company manages to weather the Great Depression, Howard is determined to make sure the company is on solid ground for the future, no matter what happens. So, like his father before him, he knows he must take steps to ensure the next generation of Heinz leadership is ready. And Howard has little doubt that it should be his son Jack to one day take the reins.
Jack Heinz was charismatic, he was outgoing, people loved him. Like his father, he was a Yale graduate. He was the type A personality CEO that was the logical successor to the Heinz empire.
So, what's going on down in Washington is really important. It's good for our business.
An upcoming executive in the company, Jack is a rising star on Pittsburgh's civic and social scene, along with his wife, Joan Deal, whom he married in 1935.
She was an amazing woman. She was ahead of her time. She was only the 12th woman to be licensed as an airplane pilot in America.
Over the next several years, Jack's responsibilities within the company grow, as does his family, with the birth of his son, John Heinz III, in 1938. And while Howard looks forward to the day when he will be able to pass the torch, that day sadly comes too soon. On February 9th, 1941, Howard Heinz suffers a stroke and passes away at the age of 63. The shock of Howard Heinz's untimely death thrusts his son Jack into the spotlight.
Howard's death came at a critical time. Young Jack Heinz had to take over the business. Some thought he might not be ready for the job.
When Henry Heinz passed away, his son Howard had already been running day-to-day operations for almost a decade. Jack Heinz, at the age of 33, is being asked to learn on the job. But Jack Heinz isn't your average 33-year-old. Having grown up in the company, he spent the past 7 years as a top executive and has developed a clear vision for the future.
Jack Heinz wanted to do more than just run a food empire. He wanted to make a better world. He was right in step with his father and grandfather.
But just as Jack is settling into his new job, his marriage is falling apart. Jack and Joan Heinz's divorce makes headlines. But for Jack, there is little time to dwell on the loss. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor pulls the United States into World War II and puts Jack's leadership at Heinz to the test.
During World War II, Heinz and other American industries had to turn on a dime to adapt to the new conditions.
like his father had during World War I. Jack keeps Heinz's factories running and its prices low.
Jack felt he had an obligation to not only his employees, but to the community at large and to the service in terms of providing help.
Knowing factories in England are a vital source of food for both the troops and war-ravaged civilians, Jack Heinz does everything in his power to keep them up and running.
Jack Heinz was one of FDR's principal emissaries to Great Britain. He crossed the Atlantic 5 times during the war years to help the United Kingdom with its food supply and bolstering morale on both sides of the Atlantic.
Heinz also does its part for the American war effort.
So we converted our Pittsburgh factory, which at the time was one of the largest factories in the world for food products, to help with the military.
Women who were once packing pickles were now making wooden and canvas gliders in their factory. Everybody pitched in.
The gliders go on to play a vital role in the success of the D-Day invasion at Normandy, delivering troops and weapons throughout the pivotal mission. At war's end, having confidently guided H.J. Heinz through every challenge, Jack stands poised to put his stamp on the company he was born to lead. His first step, taking Heinz public, ending decades of family-controlled ownership.
Jack thought that taking us public would provide the funding and the capital we needed to continue to grow.
It is a risky move, but one Jack believes he has to make.
Business titans are different than us. Well, they have to have an unbelievable work ethic and the willingness to be fearless risk takers.
Jack really began to push the company towards more international markets, towards more innovation, towards a bigger risk profile in terms of M&A that would push us more outward and really challenge just the product lines we were in.
Jack also moves to restore the company's legendary advertising presence, ultimately seizing upon the new medium of television to build the Heinz brand.
We want you to see sun-swept vistas of these and other vegetables ripening in the country's richest soil, as well as the vision of their crowning appearance on your table.
They spent more money than any other competitor on television ads.
You will see not only the satisfying quick energy food, but behind it, the big kitchen that prepared it at its peak of perfection.
Spurred on by the booming post-war economy, Heinz's sales go through the roof, pulling in $95 million in 1950, the equivalent of over $1.2 billion today.
After the Second World War, everyone knew about Heinz. I mean, every GI had eaten K rations and C rations produced by the Heinz company. And with the baby boom and the marriage boom, people were feeding their kids Heinz products every day. Everybody had ketchup on their table, and it was Heinz ketchup.
With his beautiful new wife, Drew, by his side, Jack Heinz is on top of the world, leading the life of a celebrity with a glamorous, jet-set lifestyle. But Jack's focus always remains on growing the business.
By the 1960s, Heinz started acquiring other brands. Whole businesses were purchased.
We added StarKist, we added Ore-Ida, we added Plasmon, which was the largest baby food business in Italy and one of the largest in the world.
As the company expands, Jack's hope is that even though Heinz is now publicly traded, it will continue to be led by a member of the founding family. And his dream is that it will be his son, John Heinz III, who joins the firm in 1963. Jack's only child has an impeccable pedigree, a graduate of Yale and Harvard Business School. He is also recently engaged to Teresa Simoes Ferreira, whom he met while studying abroad. Raised in Mozambique and educated in Switzerland, Teresa is smart, beautiful, and worldly, fluent in 5 languages. The couple are married on February 5, 1966, at Heinz Chapel on the campus of the University of Pittsburgh. (1966) also marks a major milestone for Jack Heinz and the Heinz family as a whole, as he retires as president and CEO, remaining on as chairman of the board. And despite Jack's hopes that his son would continue the family legacy as CEO, John Heinz III finds his calling in politics. Running as a Republican, he is elected to the U.S. Congress. And after winning re-election twice, he sets his sights higher.
Today, I don't think we have anything like him. He was electable by both parties. Sure, he was a child of privilege, but he listened to the people, just like his great-grandfather. When you talked to John Heinz, you felt like you were the only one in the room.
In 1975, with Teresa and his 3 young sons, John, Andre, and Christopher, by his side, John Heinz announces his candidacy for a seat in the U.S. Senate and goes on to capture the victory. After Heinz is re-elected by a landslide in 1982, he has people starting to whisper about bigger things.
The senator was a really thoughtful, moderate, well-intentioned human being, really decent person. The thinking was that someday he would be president of the United States.
As John Heinz's career takes off, no one is prouder of him than his father, who uses his retirement to not only focus on philanthropic work, but to embrace the opportunity to spend time with John's family. Time that is made even more precious when he is diagnosed with liver cancer in 1986. Jack Heinz passes away in 1987. From around the world, tributes pour in for a man who had left an indelible mark on his grandfather's company.
Jack really changed the essence of the company, making us look even more outwardly internationally. He took us into China. He was the one that really started thinking about the Middle East and about other markets we went into.
As Jack's only child, John inherits hundreds of millions of his father's holdings, making him one of the richest men in America overnight.
To build a country that is not only better today, but a land of growing opportunity for all Americans in the future.
And with his resounding re-election to a 3rd term in the Senate in 1988, the whispers he could one day be president grow louder. But then, on April 4th, 1991, tragedy strikes.
The political world tonight is mourning the death of Senator John Heinz. A Pennsylvania Republican and 6 others died today when Heinz's aircraft collided with a helicopter in the skies over suburban Philadelphia.
At a time when true bipartisanship was in its waning days, a man many believe could have brought the 2 parties closer together is gone at the age of 52.
You know, the story of Senator Heinz is one of the few tragic stories in the history of the company. I think he would have been a superb president and avoided some of the problems we've encountered in the past, but we'll never know. He was just such a fine leader and such a fine human being.
Heinz's widow, Teresa, inherits close to $500 million. Teresa's 1995 marriage to Democratic Senator John Kerry and his unsuccessful run for president in 2004 push her further into the public spotlight. But her primary focus remains behind the scenes, at the Heinz Family Endowments, which she oversees until 2016, when she turns over control to her sons. Today, the Heinz Endowments gives out over $70 million in grants per year. It's one of the country's largest philanthropic organizations. At the same time, the company founded by her late husband's grandfather merges with Kraft Foods to form what is today the 5th largest food and beverage company in the world, still renowned for its commitment to maintaining the highest standards in the industry. A fitting legacy to the man whose dream started it all.
Heinz changed the way we looked at food, the way we experienced it, the way we consumed it.
A dream carried on by his family.
Henry had set a legacy of growth and a legacy, again, of building great brands that resonated through the family that followed him.
Overcoming obstacles with an undying commitment to quality. The foundation of a dynasty that lives on.